Yeah,
but
you
his name
froze.
was Robert Hansen. He was charged with committing espionage in 1990s, and he was placed in prison.
I heard about that case. Smitty, it makes me think of something else I wanted to get into. Talking
Okay.
about this pursuit of occult technology, UFO technology, religious technology, etc. Are you familiar with the term clairvoyant remote viewers?
I said I'm not 100% sure what that is, so explain it to me.
So clairvoyant remote viewers are basically people. Say you've got them in a room somewhere, and you give them a location. Maybe it's a latitude and longitude, right? And
Right.
they can pretty much leave their bodies, think their mind or soul or spirit leaving their bodies and traveling around the world, according to a previous guest last night, sometimes even to space, but around the world and viewing another location. You can obviously realize that could have some major military implications, but it sounds crazy, right? At first, it sounds totally sci fi. But the
Right.
Russians in the Cold War had a department, a military department, that used clairvoyant remote viewers. Again, it sounds far fetched, but the United States literally had a military department called Project Stargate. You may have heard of it, that used clairvoyant remote viewers to spy on Russia and other locations around the world.
Wow.
And
That's pretty
that's even on the
amazing.
History Channel. You can pull it up. You might have your computer in front of you now. Smitty, that was Stargate Project or Project Stargate. One purported remote viewer was named Pat Price, and he was given a target location one day. Perhaps he's in an office in the Pentagon, but something drew him away from his target, and he got drawn to Mount Hayes, the tallest mountain in Alaska, and he purportedly went deep inside of Mount Hayes
Yeah.
into an underground alien base.
Whoa.
Right. And this was as a remote viewer for our legitimate military remote viewer department, Project Stargate. So that was during the Cold War, and now we're definitely going to enter a new Cold War, if not World War III itself. Well, Smitty, given the fact this was a legitimate program back then, remind our viewers, when are we talking here with the Cold War?
Uh, right after World War One, really 1945 to 1990, thereabout, it ended when obviously the Berlin Wall fell and the communism fell in Russia. Supposedly, communism fell in Russia. We'll
Right.
put it
Our
that way.
our viewers and our listeners. And I think this Project Stargate, as far as we know, really kicked in the 70s. Of course, that doesn't mean it wasn't going way before then. But, if we had Project Stargate in the 70s, remote viewing Russia, I mean, what might we have going on now?
Yeah, I mean, there's no telling. I believe that the military in pretty much every country is pretty much open to try almost anything to give them the upper hand. I mean, is that the guy that the Price guy? Was he the one that they made the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats about?
I'm not 100% sure about that, but Pat Price did also meet a mysterious death.
They did The Men Who Stare at Goats where they try to use people's minds to kill people for the military.
I do
And
remember that movie. I need to watch that again.
yeah, it's got what's his name? George Clooney in it. But it's based on true story. They've done all kinds of different things over in the past that many people probably wouldn't agree with or approve of. But I think it's just been trying to grasp at straws, especially during the Cold War, because we wanted to get a leg up on the Russians. I mean, at one time, literally, because the Russians put the first satellite into space and they also put the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, we revamped our whole American educational system to reflect to have more math and sciences in school just to beat the Russians. So you think about if we do that, I'm not saying we'll do anything, but I'm just saying that was the mindset. We've got to be better, and we'll stop at basically nothing to do it. You know,
Right.
what George say?
Yep. Bama George had a good point here. If you have ever seen the modern marvels about World War II Germany, they were on the verge of lots of breakthroughs that could have changed the outcome of World War II. So many, in fact, that it makes many people think they were reverse engineering alien technology.
Yeah, I mean the Germans did have the first fighter pilot jets, the Messerschmitt. I can't remember exactly the number, but it was a Messerschmitt jet plane, and our Tuskegee Airmen faced them in a battle, and that was the first Air Force jets there were. The Russians, I mean, the Germans had some really advanced technology during World War II.
Right. And see, that's what I'm talking about. You know, you got these countries in World War II pursuing all sorts of advantages that we would even today think of as just out there and just crazy and insane. You've got Russia and America using clairvoyant remote viewers to spy on each other during the Cold War. You've got one remote viewer possibly finding an alien base deep within Mount Hayes of Alaska. Now, whether our government knew about this alien base or not, that is open for debate. Whether or not that led to Pat Price's untimely, mysterious demise or not, that's open for debate. But man, Smitty, this is what I'm talking about. What is the possibility that, with the threat of World War III now clearly on the table and staring at us, are we still pushing the boundaries here for these advantages? Or is it just our adversaries doing it?
No, I'd say we'd be pushing the limits and trying to do everything we could do. I mean, I just don't think, like I said, the public's quite aware of it, but I believe that they're going to try to do everything within their power to make sure that we're safe and that we can dominate if need be. I mean, I don't think it's just good enough to refer to nuclear weapons anymore because if we use nuclear weapons, we knew that, like you said, SAD will take place, self assured destruction. And so we're trying to get a leg up. And I think we'll try to do it any way possible.
You know what else I find interesting is the name of that remote viewing project, Project Stargate. That seems
Well,
a
that is.
little too connected to UFO technology to me, or is it just me?
Oh, I mean, I agree. Stargate is obviously sounds very connected to some sort of alien technology.
So it makes you wonder. I mean, seriously, if we're willing to admit that we had a Project Stargate using remote viewers and have that out in the public information, what might have really been going on behind the scenes that we don't even know about? And this is in the 70s.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're talking about going from, well, you think about it. It's so strange. And I was telling my students this the other day, but like this cell phone, well, you can't see it, but it has more capabilities computer wise than the computers that we used to put a man on the moon in 1969.
Yep.
Think about how far we've came since 1969 to 2022, and that's not that long. I
We're
mean,
not
that's
putting people on the
only,
moon though.
but that's only what, 7 years, 6 years before I was born,
Sure,
and 5 years before you were born.
sure. So if
So,
we had a remote viewing project in the 70s called Project Stargate, my goodness, what sort of projects might we have going on? That's why I think it's a legitimate possibility that at least some of the UAPs are ours. Like we've said, there's a certain percent chance that that is the situation, and that we are exploring alien technology to get ourselves ahead for what could be World War III.
oh, definitely. I mean, you know, and I don't think, like you said, I do not think that it would just be evasive. There's
Right,
got to be, if they're doing it, there's got to be some kind of destructive property to these weapons. I mean, if they're not, then they're only weapons we've ever created that I'm aware of in the history of the United States military. I mean, well, let's say planes or something like that, vehicles that didn't have some sort of use of weaponry. So it
right.
wouldn't make any sense.
No, I agree. But here's a thought experiment for you, Smitty.
Okay.
If these UAPs are ours, we've got advanced evasion technology plus advanced offensive capability beyond the comprehension of other countries. Is this a secret so big that we would not even use it to stop World War III?
I don't know. I would think that maybe we would stop World War III, but I think that we would have to be on the precipice of almost annihilation, possibly, to do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying we would try to every other avenue before we did that. It would be basically, in my opinion, the last thing that we did. Uh, what am I?
Well, if we had show military consultant Mr. J on, he would remind us how departmentalized the military is. We're talking about probably a very small amount of people that would even know about this. Clearly, our own Navy pilots don't know that this is in our arsenal. I think it's a very distinct possibility that such a small number of people know about it, that it might not ever come out of the box, even in the face of simultaneous atomic destruction.
That's true. Well, you think about it too. If that few of people know about it, there can only be a very small, slim number of people who could actually operate it.
Yes.
If it is actually operated by a person inside the actual, craft, it could be possibly like a drone, but you still have to operate it. I guess. I don't know. Maybe the technology's so far above everything else that it can be self-operated.
Yeah, and
I mean,
but if we did take it out of the box, so to speak, you're looking at a situation where you've you've got to reveal that to the other departments, right? To the president, to the Pentagon. You've got to take it outside the box and break down the departmentalization of the knowledge there, and or you've got to put it on the battlefield without even the knowledge of the president.
right. Not to mention once it's out, it's gonna be out. And that would change the way that everyone looked at us. It may change the whole infrastructure of the world and our part in it.
That's
That
true.
would be That would be something to think about because it would be strange.
So we're talking
I
about,
mean,
yeah. I mean, where would this fall on our priority list? Sounds like to me, based on our thought experiments, it should still be a pretty high priority. And of course, we had this headline, February 24th, 2022, world headline: Russia launches a full-scale assault on Ukraine. And of course, this is why we're trying to put into context our UFO UAP headlines from the last couple of years. How do we put it into context with the threat of nuclear war and the possibility of World War III? And we had an interesting headline here just a couple of days ago, Smitty. This is from the Daily Star in the UK. This was written by Nick Pope. Have you heard of Nick Pope? You may have seen
mm-mm.
him on television. So he's a freelance British journalist, media commentator, and former civil servant, whilst an employee at the British government's Ministry of Defence. Nick Pope was responsible, among other things, for investigating UFO phenomenon to determine if they had any defense significance. And he wrote an article titled Russia Ukraine Crisis Deterring Aliens from Making Their Presence Known. Says UFO specialist, that specialist being Nick Pope himself. So you can see what his thought is. He says Russia's Vladimir Putin's constant threats risking World War III erupting is hindering chances of aliens making first contact with humans on Earth. He investigated flying saucers for the Ministry of Defense. He believes extraterrestrials who keep a close eye on Earth will view Russia's escalation of tensions as primitive behavior. The UFO expert says sophisticated alien civilizations, who he reckons would be light years ahead of us, may see it as a reason not to visit us or get in touch. He said highly evolved extraterrestrials probably regard warfare as something that only primitive civilizations engage in. So the Ukraine situation means we're unlikely to get an invitation to join the Galactic Federation, for example, anytime soon.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, there's been war going on somewhere on this earth a long, long time. And I mean, this guy's probably pretty intelligent, but still, why would he say that this particular one would hinder the aliens? I mean, they've had other opportunities. For as we know, if aliens do exist, they could have came here any period of time that they wanted to, time of peace or war. So what would make this one any different than any of the other ones we've ever had, or the times of peace,
Right.
which have been few and far between?
And Nick Pope's viewpoint actually carries a lot of weight in the UFO world, in ufology, being as he was in the British government's Ministry of Defense. And so his stance on aliens and UFOs carries a lot of weight. And so, you know what he says, that goes down the thought experiment of, okay, these UAPs are alien technology. So we're heading down that path, right? And
Right.
maybe this is still why they just won't reveal themselves, because of the constant warring.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a possibility. Uh, I mean, that's what I was kind of hinting at is that we've been in wars so often that I'm just saying I don't see why he's particularly picking this particular one out, this conflict, because there's been conflicts going on for years and years. And if that is the case, which is possible, if they do exist, then that might be somewhat of a, you know, uh, reason for them not to make contact. Why would they make contact with this group of people who are nothing but, in their opinion, a bunch of Neanderthals?
Right. And I hate to tell you this, Smitty, but it reminds me of something else too. Ancient alien theorists, you know, they believe lots of UFOs were in the Bible. The Bible certainly talks about a lot of celestial beings, and Smitty is also our resident religious expert. The Bible certainly talks a lot about celestial beings, beings from beyond the earth. It reminds me a little bit, I hate to say, of Revelation. Revelation previews the apocalypse. and the eventual unveiling, essentially, of celestial beings to the population of Earth as they intervene in the apocalypse. They let some events play out, they intervene in other events, they reveal themselves to the population of Earth during Armageddon, and we have some other things like that happen, with the celestial beings. The Bible, of course, calls these angels and archangels. Just reminds me a little bit
Yeah,
of Revelation, Smeety.
somewhat. I mean, if there's different viewpoints. Some people believe that most of the things that happen in Revelation, a lot of it were referring to the Roman Empire, and that a lot of those things have gone to pass because if you look in the book of Daniel, all those prophecies in Daniel have already taken place because they were referring to different empires throughout history. So, it's there's a lot of different interpretations and about Revelation, and it's very difficult. Man, that'd be a whole single podcast you could get into for years about that.
Yes. Well,
And people have been looking for the end of time forever, and we've had wars and rumors of wars and those types of things. And a lot of people want world peace, but I don't believe there ever will be.
right. But it is interesting, right? Like how we're looking at the news of potential World War III, simultaneous atomic destruction, which you could easily dub Armageddon. I mean, my goodness, why would you not put that in the category of an Armageddon? And you also have a lot of people out there that want aliens to reveal themselves and come down and intervene in such a situation, right? And that
Right.
falls right in line with Revelations. Well, Smitty, I've only got two more things here, real quick, for tonight.
Okay.
So I want to rewind back to the headline from October 2019 that we led the show off with. 3 reasons to investigate the U.S. Navy UFO incidents. One was global warming, remember that? And
Mm,
another was basically improving our relationship with Mother Nature. Headline now, March 1st, 2022. Author Michael Schellenberger on Substack writes an article, The West Green Delusions Empower Putin. While we banned, he's talking about Europe, plastic straws, Russia drilled and doubled their nuclear energy production. He says, in service to green technology ideology, they made the perfect enemy of the good and of Ukraine. Green campaigns have succeeded in destroying German energy independence. They called it energy turnaround by successfully selling policymakers on a peculiar version of environmentalism. I think, yes, he says it calls climate change a near term apocalyptic threat to human survival while turning up its nose at the technologies that can help address climate change most and soonest, like nuclear and natural gas. He says because of these choices, Vladimir Putin could turn off the gas flows to Germany and quickly threaten their ability to cook or stay warm. Putin's successor, whoever that may be, will hold this power for every foreseeable winter. And in
man, this
2019, they were saying these UAPs are important for global warming and improving our relationship with nature. But look how
yeah,
that's turned around on us now.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's that's pretty big. I don't know.
So I know it's something else. Like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. We won't get into the political implications of it. One more thing, Smitty. I've been wanting to do this for a while. Probably our two biggest topics on all things unexplained are UFOs and Bigfoot, right?
Right.
So I've been wondering for a while now, what if, and a lot of people are in the Bigfoot camp, or they're in the UFO camp, or they're in both, and they kind of give equal credence to both. And I'm about to do a little experiment here to show you that there is a difference between the amount of credence we should give, and it breaks my heart to say this, but the credence we should give to UFOs versus Bigfoot. And all we have to do is apply Bigfoot to these headlines and just imagine what the reaction would be. So imagine, Smitty, in 2019, if the Hill reported headline, 3 reasons to investigate the U.S. Navy Bigfoot incidents.
I didn't even know that those were a real thing.
They're not. So I'm taking the word UFO out and inserting the word Bigfoot.
Okay.
So imagine headline 2020. We did this one earlier. It was top secret UFO files could gravely damage U.S. national security if released. Navy says. The Navy says this. Imagine if that said top secret Bigfoot files could gravely damage U.S. national security if released. Navy says.
Yeah, that would be pretty crazy. I tell you what, it'd probably make me feel a little better
Yeah,
because
I know.
I feel less threatened by Bigfoot than I do these other things.
So we said
So
in April 2021 on Global News, headline, leaked footage of pyramid-shaped UFOs is real, Pentagon says. Imagine if that said, leaked footage of Bigfoots is real, Pentagon says. I mean, can you imagine?
yeah, then maybe we could send them to Russia or the Ukraine and help the Ukrainians fight.
Well, they've already got
Uh,
the Yeti, supposedly, the abominable
well, that's
snowman.
true.
I mean,
That's true.
you do remember the Dyatlov Pass incident, after all.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's where they all was. That where they went missing,
That's where the hikers went missing.
and they
Some
found the
people,
footprints.
yep. I still think the Russian military probably was responsible for that. But again, it just keeps coming back to Russia, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But in my
They have
mind,
been somewhat of a thorn in the side.
yes. But in my mind, Smitty, this kind of shows the difference between Bigfoot and UFOs right now. That, if the headlines in the news were like this about Bigfoot, I mean, wow, what a game changer, right? But unfortunately, we don't have those type of Bigfoot headlines just yet.
No, and you think that if he was as legitimate, possibly as the UAPs, that the U.S. Army would have picked up on him somewhere because you think, but there are, and you can go to this, but there are some Vietnam veterans accounts of Bigfoot are like creatures that were in the jungles of Vietnam, and they have sworn basically to that effect that there were some Vietnam Bigfoot like creatures in Vietnam.
Yep. That might have been the Ogopogo or the something orangupandex, something like that. That's a good point, Smitty. Well, let me
There's
see here.
actually a story in April of 2021 comes out about Vietnam. Some soldiers were convinced that they saw Bigfoot in Vietnam.
There you go. We need, but imagine if that was a headline today.
I know
Soldiers verify Bigfoot
that
sightings.
would be that would be amazing.
And with that, music, sounds like about time for us to get out of here, Smitty.
It's been fun, but it's
It
been
has.
fun.
I think we all need to say, prayers for this nation, prayers for the world, though, on a serious note.
Definitely. A lot of bad things going down right now. But
Well,
be happy and be strange and listen to all things unexplained.
that's right. Good night, Smitty. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night.
CJ. Missed you.